Happy Good Friday, and it is a Good Friday because this is the day that we remember that Christ was sacrificed to redeem us from sin and death. And you've probably heard the quote that says, "It's Friday, but Sunday's a coming." This is so very true, but I think it's important for us to really sit with Good Friday, to not rush ahead to Sunday, to see that it was our sin that required the shedding of blood, and to let the weight of the evil and the horrors of that day really hang in our hearts. So that's my desire today, is to be present, to think on these things, to think that if it wasn't for Friday, then my sin would not have been atoned for, and not to rush ahead, because I think we can't truly appreciate Resurrection Sunday until we fully embrace Good Friday. So today in our reading, we read Isaiah 53, which is on the suffering servant. And we saw that it was God's will to crush him, that it was God who put him on the cross for you and for me. And so as we looked at that, we saw that a holy God must punish sin. And he did punish sin fully on Christ on the cross. And this is what makes all the horrors of Good Friday so very good. But if we don't sit with that, then we won't appreciate Resurrection Sunday. Yesterday in our reading, we saw the disciples celebrating the Passover meal with Jesus, and we saw how Jesus seemed to breathe new life and new meaning into this traditional feast. And it reminded me of something that we saw years ago. When we were in Memphis, we were at a church that would have a passion play every year. And the writers would write the script every year from a different perspective of someone. And one year, I distinctly remember they wrote it from the perspective of a boy who had a pet lamb, a perfect pet lamb without blemish. The focus of the play was on the boy and his pet lamb, and you see Jesus's life and the boy's life intertwined on the stage. And then on Good Friday, there were two scenes happening simultaneously on the stage. On one side, you had the boy who is having his pet lamb being taken from him to be sacrificed. On the other side, you have Jesus being hung on the cross to be sacrificed. And as they lifted the knife to kill the lamb, Jesus cries out, "It is finished." Those words were so comforting for me to hear and sit with today. It is finished. And as I thought about the beginning creation, when sin entered the world, that blood had to be shed to atone for that. And then as you see throughout the Old Testament, you see all this, the blood that's spilled through the sacrifices, but it wasn't sufficient. Just like the boy's lamb wasn't sufficient to take away our sin. It was all pointing to Christ and his blood that would be sufficient to take away our sin. Our reading today in Hebrews 9 shows that Christ's blood was better because it secures eternal redemption for us, and it purifies our conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So I want you to hear these words in Hebrews 9. So this is Hebrews 9, verse 11 through 14, and it says, "But when Christ appeared as a high priest of the good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with hands, that is not of this creation, he entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with the ashes of a heifer sanctify for the purification of the flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from dead works to serve the living God." And then later on in verse 22, it says, "Indeed, under the law, almost everything is purified with blood, and without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness of sins." So I want to sit with this today, and I encourage you to sit with this today. Sit with the weight of the horrors of Good Friday. Don't rush past it. Even sit in Holy Saturday. Don't rush to Sunday just yet. See him hanging there for you and for me. Yes, Sunday is coming, but don't rush past today and Holy Saturday. when I thought of the words, "it is finished," it was very encouraging to me because it doesn't say it was finished, although that's true, but it says it is finished. And what that means is today, my sin today, I can hear those words spoken, that the blood is still applied and it speaks a better word over our sins even today.